Derek is about to introduce Olympism and the Olympic values to you. So I'll leave it with Derek.
Thank you for that, Trevor, and apologies. I've just literally been able to return, so the timing is impeccable. I do apologise for obviously not having a video up as well. So Olympism, I mean, this is the definition that we will have from the Olympic Charter as a concept. It's referring to a philosophy of life combining balance in the quality of body, will and mind. But I think critically from this perspective, we pick up on that commentary about blending sport with culture and education. This is the absolute key. And in relation to Generation Amazing, we can see sport, and obviously football, as an Olympic sport in this context. It's not just about Olympism, it's about the concept of sport. So let's now think a little bit about how we can translate that broad statement, that concept, into practical delivery for learning programs, whatever that context might be. So what we, I think, best need to think about here is the concept of values. Because if we were to break down Olympism into its constituent parts and the power of sport to make a wider difference, it's these values or themes, and I think the idea of themes is the critical one, because we can apply and develop those in a variety of contexts to inspire learning, whatever the setting. They're universal in their application, and that's the key, whether that's respect, friendship, inspiration, excellence, determination, courage, or equality. It's their universality and their application which is key. So let's now take a look at one of those values and explore how perhaps we can think about it shaping creative learning in practice. Let's look at determination. And can I ask you to think about how you would define determination? And perhaps we can use the chat box function to share some ideas. I'll give you a moment's reflection. And apologies, I may still have some technical difficulties because I'm not sure, here we are, if I can see any of the responses coming through. Any thoughts in relation to what we might define as determination? Wonderful, I can. Okay. Okay, well, let's think about what that definition might look like in practice. One definition might be the manifestation of an idea that people can, I can see them coming through now. Wonderful. The will to keep trying. I think that's absolutely brilliant. A focus, a sense of focus, definitely. Anything further that colleagues would like to add? The will to keep trying. I love that. And that sense of focus. Well, let's pick that up as a definition that potentially we could share, which is the idea that people push their abilities to the absolute limit. that sense of keeping trying and having that really special sense of focus. So taking those definitions that have come through on the chat box and what we have there, so picking up on those ideas of the will to keep trying, a sense of focus, pushing yourself to your absolute limit, could we take a moment to think and reflect? And can you think of a time when a friend or a family member, or indeed yourself, actually demonstrated determination? What was it that happened, and how did that demonstrate this quality of determination? Let's take that moment to pause now and reflect, and then let's see if we see ideas coming through in the chat box. Any thoughts that anybody would like to add? I can think of one example here where just before the session, I was experiencing some technical difficulties, and it was really important to try and keep a sense of purpose and focus, and then work it through. We got there in the end. Okay, let's move forward if we possibly can. So let's also reflect on famous athletes. Is there anybody that we can possibly think of that may have shown determination in their career? And again, if we can use the chat box, I think there's a little bit of difficulty. I'm not seeing things coming through, and I think Trevor might not be able to either. So my apologies if you are noting something, we're not picking up on it. I'll just give it a moment. We've got Kafu coming in there. Yep, okay. Yep, I understand that. Is it possible to add what actually you respect about their determination in that context? We're beginning to trial here the sorts of conversations that we could potentially have with our students. Well, hold the thought of the particular athlete in your mind, and whatever we might admire about their determination, perhaps there's also a moment to reflect on what further they might do, what they might improve, which could lead you to further respect what they have actually done in their career, and why you would even think more highly of their determination in this particular context. I'll just pause there for a moment while you reflect. Okay, well, let's move on to see about an example and reflect on an example of determination that actually went right around the globe. This takes us back to the Barcelona Olympics in August of 1992. And it's a British athlete, a 400-meter runner, Derek Redmond. He progressed through to the semi-final. He'd been the fastest qualifier for the semi-final. Let's see what happens. He's probably the favourite to win this race and go through to the final. We're just going to pause for a moment in terms of hopefully some video.
I'm afraid the link is not working.
We'll describe what happens then. We apologise once again just for the technical issues there. So Derek Redmond, favourite really to win this particular race and progress through to the final. He gets off to an absolutely fantastic start, and just after about 110 metres, he's running well, and literally Derek hears a pop as he enters the back straight, and his hamstring has absolutely torn. It's gone. He actually collapses almost on the spot in pain. He's in absolute agony. It looks as though his race is completely and utterly finished. There's no way that he can even walk, it would appear. But then something special happens. That quality, that value, that characteristic that we just talked about, determination, suddenly kicks in. He's desperate and he wants to finish what he fears could be the last ever race in his life. And somehow, in absolute agony, he picks himself up and begins to hop. As you can see there, he begins to hop for the next 300 metres or so to the finish line. The crowd begin to get behind him. But then something else critical happens as he emerges from the home straight. A figure comes out of the crowd, pushes past the security guards, and it looks as though we might actually see this live and in real time in a moment. We'll just pause to see if it's going to play. Okay. I'll carry on just to see if we can get the video, but you can see there the image. This is the character that's emerged from the crowd, and it's Jim, his dad. It's Derek's dad. And in that iconic moment, to a standing ovation from all of the spectators, we see the father and the son actually cross the line together. It's one of those really special moments that has been recorded in Olympic history for its statement around determination. But if we think about that image there as well, that we can see on the screen, I just wonder, in terms of reflection, whether there are other values, if we think about those that we described earlier, not just determination, that we might be able to see in that image that captures that moment. I'll just pause there for a second to see whether or not we can see some responses in the chat box. Are there other values that this particular event has shown? An amazing state of mind, yes, an incredible focus, an incredible ability to respond to the moment. I'm wondering, in terms of those values that we thought about earlier, is that an expression of courage, for example? Is it about the mutual respect between father and son? Is it a moment of inspiration? Because perhaps all of those points, and indeed friendship. And I think that's a great example of how Olympism and the idea of these sporting values offer that flexibility for learning activities. That moment we've here used to exemplify determination, but just as equally, you can build learning around respect, friendship, courage, and excellence. an inspiration for that particular moment. So that's just an example of how the values might be used. I'm now going to pass back to Trevor, who's going to, I think, really pick up on how we can bring this whole concept and value to life.
Trevor, you're on mute. You need to unmute, Trevor. Trevor, can you take your mic off mute, please?
Oh.
Trevor, we can't hear you. You're on mute. You need to mute your mic, please.
Apologies. Can you hear me now?
Can hear you. You can share your slides again.
My
From the top, from where you started.
my absolute apologies. This is so we're talking here about determination, and Derek's example there, two Dereks, our Derek and Derek Redmond. The choices that we face when something happens, that will to keep going. In Derek Redmond's video, and if you YouTube Derek Redmond and father, you'll find the film, and really recommend a watch, just to get underneath that human spirit and the strength of the human spirit, as evidenced with our active hero. Ahmed is one of our active, Doha born and bred, became paraplegic in a car accident when he was 17 years old, just at that age when you might think life is beginning to kick off, and adult life is beginning to kick off. And Ahmed is inspirational because of his determination. He's made it his mission to keep himself as active and as strong as he possibly can. And he's never considered himself to not be a participant or a player. He played sport as a child, he still plays sport, and is active now. And if you're living in Doha, you almost certainly will have seen Ahmed as a regular participant in endurance events. This is the which he completed. And Ahmed's determination is his inspiration, and it drives him to keep himself strong and healthy and fit, so that if a new treatment is developed which might help him to walk again, his body's in the right condition to handle it. And that, for me, is the mark of determination. This is something which has an objective, something which is clearly significant and important to somebody's life, but a disability which he has, as we say on the top, he's disabled but definitely able. Nothing stops him, and his determination is what drives him. He's an inspirational ambassador for people with disabilities. He understands the transferable skills that sport and being physically active gives you. And he works tirelessly to support other people with disabilities. He's a strong ambassador with Qatar Foundation and their multi-abilities activity there, and truly an active hero. He's made sport part of his life for his own reasons, but it's his determination to be ready to receive treatment that drives him on. So, unfortunately, I'm not able to see the chat function, but I'm hoping that there's lots of interesting things being put in. But just give us your thoughts. How do those two stories make you feel personally? What's your emotional reaction to those two stories?
Can you connect them to the values, do you think? is there a resonance there? We've talked about determination, but I think both of those examples provide so many other qualities and characteristics.
And maybe think about how you would react in that same situation. If you were Derek or you were Ahmed, would your response be the same? Or would it be something different?
Because it's stimulating those personal responses that we're really seeking to do. I'm not, unfortunately, seeing the chat particularly well either, so it's difficult for us just to be able to share any response at this point.
We know it's being recorded, so if we know who you are, sponsors, which we'd love to be able to do that, please put an email address in the chat or something.
I have just seen something move through. It's something like the essences of increasing our chances of being successful in a particular goal, and can help us to stay motivated. So there's a fantastic personal response there from Pfizer.
Right, so let me try again. So thinking about how we would react, thinking about those two stories that we've heard, here's a look at some of the activities or some of the exhibits or some of the stories when you get to the museum next year. And we hope if you're not in Doha and you do come to Doha for 2022, you'll put the museum on your list of things to do when you're not watching World Cup football. Come and see us. Please tell us that you were on this workshop. Be great to meet some people and know that you've been with us at least a couple of years. So two exhibits particularly, which our Hall of Athletes perhaps will demonstrate determination through a different light. So Mayumi Narita was when you read her story, you'll realise she was pretty prolific if you don't know the lady. She won just about swimming medal in her competitive years, and was still competing in her late 30s, early 40s, and still winning medals. And this little quote from Mayumi here, I think, says it all about determination. Let's not let barriers like age stand in the way. If you're determined and you have the conviction to do a thing, you can do it. Very, very.
Can I interject there, Trevor, because there's another really motivational comment from Pfizer that's come through the chat room, where she's talking about the idea that if you might be part of a community which doesn't incentivize or motivate you to take part physically, this kind of inspiration, what you've just described there, and the story that we've just shared, is something that has a personal resonance and is something that's really helpful to you personally.
No, that's fantastic. And I think, I mean, that's the important part, certainly around our resource approach, the resources attached to the museum. An Olympic and Sports Museum does sound like we're talking about the champions. One of Ahmed, we're talking about Ahmed, one of is that we all need to focus on being the world champion at being ourselves. So we can all be world champions if the world championship is only open to one person. So let's just be the best version of ourselves. Physical journey, completely agree. This is an everyday experience for everyday people, and we would hope through the museum and through these programs to help us all to understand that we should not expect to be champions. That can be quite scary. What we should be able to do is to focus on being better at being us. And if we do very little activity now, doing something more than we do now is a step in the right direction. That's part of it. For that comment, yeah, that's really here.
Brilliant.
Our second exhibit in the museum is Steve Redgrave, who I'm sure many people will know. He won gold medals at 5 successive Olympic Games. That's phenomenal. That's going over 20 years, competing at that top level. Not many people know that he had an ongoing illness during all of that period. So it was his determination which allowed him to manage the illness and still earn a place in a boat over 5 consecutive Olympic Games and win a gold medal. A fantastic representation of determination. And as Derek has already said, many other values come to mind with those stories as well. If we're looking at courage, particularly, if we're looking at excellence, there are some fantastic examples of all of these values. And as we can apply those to our daily lives as well. And I think that's an important part of our resources and these conversations as we're going forwards.
And absolutely building on that, and just to echo that point as well around Redgrave, I don't recall until really later in his career that anybody was aware of that debilitating illness that he had. And I think that sort of leads us into the idea that, you know, the greatness that's inside everyone. I love that quote, Trevor, you know, being the world champion of me, you know, maybe it's being the best version of me. And I think what's so powerful here and why the values are so important, we have these opportunities to reflect on ourselves and our behaviours. And I think if we were to think about now this idea of determination, how do we put that into practice? How do we manifest this in our daily lives? How do we think about the daily challenges that we might need to overcome, and perhaps the young people that we might be responsible for if we're working in a teaching context, if we're learning together with them? How can we get them to reflect on these examples, either from elite sport or from these daily active heroes, these ordinary people doing extraordinary things to make a difference? This is what the power of the 3-2-1 program and the museum actually brings. So I guess it's the opportunity in whatever context to think about how in our daily lives we could say things, do things, and indeed pass on the inspiration to others to be determined. So perhaps there's the opportunity to reflect on that for a moment as well, but to come together for some further feedback through the chat that Trevor and I can reflect on. And I think it's really important, although we focused on the value of determination, it's thinking about all of those values collectively, because there's an interchangeability and relationship between them.
And this is a very key message. You'll see the icon at the bottom. This particular activity is for the 3-2-1 active program, and you'll remember I said at the start, this is for young people aged 8 to 12. And for many young people, we're finding this is quite a new and potentially quite a difficult process of self-reflection. Is not a thing which comes naturally. So when we're asking young people of this age to think about what they might say or how the situations with the background, we're having some wonderful thought processes and some great conversation, and an opportunity for people and young people in a classroom situation, whether that's in real time or whether it's virtually, people to also pull out examples of where they have seen their contemporary demonstrating determination. So one child might be able to tell a story about their friend and how their friend demonstrated determination in a particular part of their life, and finding this process in a school or in any group situation is really, really interesting, next to putting people into as citizens of a group and of a society and a community, as well as being individuals. Who could you pass determination on to? Is a really interesting question. And I'm sure we all know people who we would love to be able to encourage, excuse me, to try a little bit harder, or to do something perhaps with a little bit more focus, because we believe it would help them in the long run. Determination is a difficult thing to pass on. It's not a contagious element about it. There is a theme and a strand and a motivation underneath it all. So really valuable exercise in considering how we as individuals can become the world champions of ourselves in showing determination or courage or excellence or friendship or any other of those Olympic and Paralympic values.
And I think, Trevor, colleagues, I reflect on this with 33 years of experience as a teacher and 20 years as a head teacher or principal, never imagining that interaction with young people wouldn't be face to face, whether I would be delivering this in a classroom or an assembly, and encouraging them to look at an iconic example, or indeed an example within the school of somebody who's shown those qualities. But I think what we see with these resources now, and almost certainly in the period that's going to lead up to the World Cup, at the very least, we're going to be in a situation where we're going to need to show flexibility in learning, and the power of the resource here, where it can be online as well as live, is that it gives the opportunity for reflection, and for young people and their teachers to move through the resource and the thinking about it very much in their own time, and that adds to the flexibility of the use.
Absolutely, and I think, we've seen how perhaps slightly problematic an online or virtual scenario can be just through our last sort of 40 minutes or so today, and of course we will all get better at that. But those of you, particularly if you're in Doha and you're attached to the education system, if you're working in schools at this point in time, the 3-to-1 active program we're expecting will be live and available through the Ministry of Education in the next few weeks. So this is a resource that you will be able to access and to download, and we're putting it into a Microsoft Teams format so that you can deliver the sessions like this virtually with your students, using the ministry's Microsoft Teams program. So that's to be confirmed. But what we've tried to do, I'm conscious of our time, what we've tried to do through this is I guess give you a snapshot of some of the approaches that we're aiming to take through the Olympic and Sports Museum, not just to showcase Muhammad Ali's gloves. They're very nice, and Muhammad Ali's story himself in itself is compelling and inspirational, but also to use the sport metaphor as a framework for life, and Olympism and the Olympic values. 7 words, but 7 words as a framework and as a code of conduct, extremely powerful when we apply them to ourselves and to the people who are around us. And we can draw stories from the world of sport to make the point. So we're very keen to join with you across the world with these programs, and to see you engage with the museum, even if you're not able to physically come to the building. These are all programs that we will be rolling out in the next year or so. The first 4 there, skill development program, and we're hoping that will come online in the early part of next year. So look out for those. We would love to hear your feedback and comments on what you've seen so far, and if you're after any information about these, or would like to connect with the museum in any way in the future, whether it's concerning exhibits or whether it's concerning the education programs, we'd love to hear from you. So I'm, excuse me, we'll leave the chat open for just a few minutes. Otherwise, thank you very much to Derek for his input. Thank you. If you've stayed with us during the clunky periods, thank you. We hope you at the museum. and we hope you enjoy the rest of your festival.